Tonight's tactical enhancement is snow. Tonight we're playing Warhammer 8th edition, 2000 points, battle line, because, well, sometimes you just feel like lining shit up and smashing it. And I'm playing against Doug and Emilio, who are collaborating on the Tomb Kings, and I'm fielding my Dwarfs. I knew what they were bringing before I selected my army, so I just said, tell you what, you just choose which army you want to fight against. We ended up rolling a dice and we came up with Dwarfs. So I'm fielding 2 cannon, both of the runes, to stop the cannon from exploding, which is actually kind of expensive when you get down to it, but it's better than your cannon blowing up when you need them to work. A core of 24 bog standard warriors with shields at full command, 24 longbeards with shields and full command and a banner that makes them stubborn, and 24 iron breakers full command and a banner that makes them stubborn and gives them a one-off leadership test on 1d6, so they're not going anywhere. We gave great weapons and shields to the longbeards, even though they won't use the shields in melee. I modelled them that way, so I like to pay the points for the extra bits. And as for the characters, we have a Stein who's packing 3 runes of iron. Gives him an extra wound, so he's 3 wounds. Toughness 6 and a 5 plus regen. Then we have a standard bearer who has Master Rune of Valia, so +2 to spell to the army, and he gets rid of any remains and play spells on 3+, plus the runes of stoicism and stubbornness, so much like the iron breakers, whichever unit has that standard will be stubborn and will get one off 1d6 leadership test. And that general is a lord. He's packing 3 runes of fortitude, so he's got a 4+ ward and he's toughness 6. And he's also got 3+ armor with a runestone. So oh yeah, and all the characters are on Oathstone. So basically our objective is to be surrounded. We're never happier than when we're in the middle of it, and doesn't always work, it's worth noting. It generally doesn't work against Andrew, but I'll refer you to the last battle report for the dramas I have on that front. Anyway, that's 2,000 points worth of dwarf right there. You don't get a lot once you start equipping them well. And in the Tomb Kings corner, this is what you get for 2,000 points worth of Tomb Kings. Doug, talk us through what you got.
Cetra the Imperishable is leading the army with a unit of 3 chariots and full command. Rounding out the core, we have 5 skeletal horsemen with spears, and 5 skeletal horse archers, as well as a unit of 20 skeletons. The Tomb Prince model in there is masquerading for this battle as a Tomb Herald, because
that's that fellow, is it?
The points. Yes.
What's a Tomb Herald?
Yes. He just has a killing blow and two wounds.
Well, that goes well.
We have the 2 sphinxes, a Necro Sphinx and also a War Sphinx.
Might I say, that is a pretty bit of Egyptian rip-off right there.
Yes. love those models. It's one of the things that I like a lot about the Tomb Kings.
And I've not seen this one before.
Yes, the War Sphinx has fiery roar, so it has a breath weapon. It does not have the poison upgrade, despite having a poison looking tail. But
oh, hello, Mr. Scorpion.
Fun to use. And then we have 2 Tomb Swarms at the back.
Oh,
these guys, which will be burrowing just to hopefully
annoy my cannon, I
buzz
imagine.
around and annoy the dwarfs. And then 3 Tomb Scorpions, because why not? And I just like them, like the way they look. I think they're fun to use.
Look at that thing. Oh, that's not friendly.
70 points each, so they're not
85.
85
not as good as they
points
used to, but still
each.
decent. Not.
If they're anything like those beasts of Nurgle and the way they operate, they'll be suitably annoying to warrant the
They
points.
unfortunately are nowhere near as good for the points as the beasts of Nurgle. They do, however, have killing blow, so potentially a threat to the dwarven characters.
You can't issue a challenge though, can you?
No, but they can target, I think, them in melee, or if, say, one of them decided to fight one for whatever reason.
Alright,
And
well, I
then
have to think about that.
we have the Casket of Souls, which is the final thing in the army, which can hopefully...
Well, that guy doesn't look anything like Indiana Jones. Very pretty model, and it weighs a ton, by the way.
Yes.
That's metal, isn't it?
Metal version.
Yes, original metal.
Lovely.
It outweighs everything else in the army put together.
Alright, lovely. And look, I can't remember the last time I fought Tomb Kings, and when I did, I think it was some weird proxy army with done in the Greek hoplite style, which looked cool, but it wasn't anywhere near as dangerous as what this is. So fuck knows how this will go. Anyway, we'll deploy our armies and then we'll check back in. So we are now deployed. We have advancing cavalry on the dwarf right, that's the undead left. Sphinx, fucking phalanx of chariot. Magic casting fellow at the back, who I'm probably not going to like very much by the end of the game. Infantry, scorpion, other sphinx, and some things. And looks like the other fellows, they're burrowing, are they?
Yes, 3 barrels.
God, just to annoy my cannon. It's probably going to stop my cannon being useful most of the game. And we've got some cavalry who snuck in on the flank here. And in the meantime, I have a small block of dwarf infantry and some cannon. And I'm using more of the Warhammer Townscape buildings. This is the ever useful watchtower. I put a little tent out the front with some weapons. They've been that's the accommodation for its manning watchtower. And we've got a little farm and some wheat fields, and because there's wheat fields, we need to have a windmill for crushing the wheat into flour. Hills on either sides of the little valley, and some trees which probably won't feature in the game at all.
They just look nice.
They do look nice. I went. Emilio doesn't like trees, so I went out and doubled my collection one day and just taunted him with photos of the assembly process. The wheat fields we said would cause light cover but do nothing else in the game, but nobody's got any shooting that's going to be affected by that, so really it's just decoration.
It's good, makes it look more deserty a little bit with the kind of brownness.
They've come a long way.
Okay.
Yeah, they have.
To
They
give
brought.
I thought it was just harvest time.
I think if you look over here, it's like desert dunes and sand, and it just stops. And then it's
Oh, okay, so we've turned up in the one fertile valley in the Sahara. Alright, let's rock a dice. Who goes first? We're also going to +1 because they
Yeah.
were entirely deployed, but the enemy army was only half deployed. But that's what you get for taking inflexible chunks of infantry. I probably should have taken some shooters and things to have some small units, but yeah, there's some things in that enemy army that I think are going to take a lot of killing. Oh, look at that. I'm pretty much automatically winning. There we go. The Dwarfs will go turn 1 and we'll check in at the end of that.
yeah, that's
Turn 1 of the Dwarves. We moved our flanks back a little bit because I don't want these bastards charging the cannon. They're going to have enough trouble as it is. And similarly, we move the warriors back a bit because these flanking cavalry will try and get past. And these traps moved up a little bit to try and support the units in a mutual way. They talked me through what the army does. They're scary. That thing flies. Their crypt is toughness 10 and has the horror thingy in it. Both of the Sphinx are toughness 8. Oh my god. And, well, the general's a bastard. So, after the shuffling, we fired both cannon. The first one knocked 3 wounds off of this guy. A nice, neat job. He did his job properly. The other one fell short. That was okay. Roll a misfire. That was okay. I had a rune, so we could roll again, bounce through. Then, of course, we rolled a 1 to wound the damn thing. It's always the way. You need at least 2 cannon to do anything, preferably 3. Anyway, that's Dwarf turn 1. We'll check in at the end of Undead turn 1. Right, end of turn 1 for the Tomb Kings. They've moved up, and all these creepy crawlies started coming out of the sand, which has me thinking maybe I should stop being a moron and taking big chunks of infantry and actually have something flexible to deal with that sort of shit. But I didn't. They can't charge this turn, but they'll be in amongst the cannon next turn, so I really need to get my next turn of shooting to work. Now, in the magic phase, I'll just square off, nothing much happened in the shooting, but in the magic phase, they got the spell off that causes nearby units to get a free move, and they shuffled up some more. So they're all in that little bit extra close now, which is not very nice, but there they are. And they did do that with the irresistible force. But then Emilio managed to skip his way through, taking any damage with lots of ones on the when the magic casters took a strength 6 hit each, and Emilio didn't have the courtesy of wounding any of them. And that was it.
And in doing so, he healed one wound that the cannon had done to the necrosphere.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the miscast seem to have done more for them than against them. On that note, we'll do turn 2 for the Dwarfs, and we'll check in after that. Well, after griping outrageously about my dice in the last game where I got creamed by Andrew, I had some rather good fortune this game. The first thing that happened was, because Doug and Emilio had used magic to move their line up closer, it put them just within a reliable charge arc of the Longbeards. So I hopped the dice and they made the charge. It was a bit of a longer shot. Yeah, basically a 2 in 3 chance for the Longbeards to make the charge, and they made it. Probably a 1 in 3 chance for the warrior unit to make the charge. So I thought, fuck it, I'll roll the dice, I'll go for it. And that pumped 1,140 points worth of my dwarf army out of 2,000 points against this one unit. It's a powerful unit, but I'll tell you what, it's facing over half my army all at once. As for the cannon, the one that took some wounds off of the Sphinx last time, put a round through it and finished the job. That Sphinx is gone. The other one, which rolled a 1 to wound against the Sphinx, fired at the other Sphinx and rolled a 1 to wound again. So we'll be checking their ammunition and possibly offering a razor and some shaving cream to whoever fucked that up. In the melee, as you might have figured out from the placement of these models, look, they killed 2 dwarfs. Cetra, whatever his name is, issued the challenge. And he, I took it with a champion, which I probably shouldn't have done. I actually thought this guy had killing blow, but he doesn't. And my general actually has hatred against him, so I probably should have pitched my general against him. But, well, bad decision making after enough beers. It happens all the time in this game. So Cetra killed the champion and challenge, as you'd expect. One of the chariots killed another dwarf, but I did pretty well in the armor saves department. And in return, these hand weapon guys bumped off a chariot. These great weapons just fucked up everything in their path and bumped off the other chariots. In fact, we had overkill. They did have a ward save. They saved 3 out of the 11.
The Hierophant are 6+ regeneration. Okay.
Yep, so the 6 gen regen, 3 out of 11 made it. Then as for the boss guy himself, because basically they were down by something absurd. When you factor in the rank bonuses and all the banners, they're down by like 11. 3 of that came back from rolling 6s for the ward saves. Once the chariots are gone, that's 9.
There was a banner, thankfully, which mitigated it a tiny bit. But the chariot of the gods is no more, and it's just Cetra on his lonesome, hanging around by himself. 1
dice. And look, these chaps over here, they will attack. Actually, he's likely to be in the flank, but we can deal with that. We have both stones. So it will be a melee yet to come. But you don't get a round of combat like that every day. I'm rather happy with that. And we'll see how the rest of the battle goes. But yes, I should not be griping about my dice for the rest of today, I suspect. Yeah, the Tomb King's turn 2. I can't believe it's turn 2. All of these infiltrating bastards got their charges in. This fellow bumped off 2 dwarfs straight away. And these 2 characters bumped off an entire cannon, which is, yeah, to be honest with you, about what you'd expect. They're now redeploying to kill what's left. With, well, maybe the assistance of some horsemen. Shooting did nothing. You'll notice there's 5 dead Iron Breakers. That's compliments of that damn thing releasing some horror, which terrified.
Light of death.
A light of death that caused sufficient general angst amongst these fellows that 5 of them just fell over dead.
Keep in mind, you've got leadership 10 and you rolled an 11.
Well, these guys are leadership 9 without a reroll because the general leadership 10 and the reroll are all over here fighting. So yeah, that was look, hey, can't have it all my own way. In the melee over here, these guys charged into the flank and lost 2, I think. Dwarfs lost 2. And Cetra had to go, he issued a challenge, and my general took the challenge. And you know what? I forgot to do my goddamn rerolls for hatred in order to hit.
That's true.
So I fucked that up. I may have been able to get another wallop on him. As it is, I took 1 wound off of him, and my dwarf's armor and everything else worked.
The ward save.
The ward save worked, yeah, because that thing ignores armor. So, and that 1 wound is what we actually won the combat by. So they didn't take any extra casualties. We are locked in for the next round. Next round is Dwarf turn 3. We'll check in after that. End of Dwarf turn 3. Right, so this unit of troops charged the Scorpion and polished it off. Mostly the Thane doing his job. The Scorpion actually tried to smash the cannon, but didn't do very well on its dice rolls. In the melee over here, they actually bumped off 5 dwarfs out of that unit. It's configured like that because they're actually in square, so that counts as a front facing. They lost 2 of their own, but then in the melee, Cetra took another wound and didn't dish any out. My Thane is getting rather lucky with his ward saves. That made it exact tie, even factoring in musicians. So that's it for, yeah, we're going to win this fight, but it's going to take us a while. So that's it for turn 3 for the Dwarves. We'll check in at the end of turn 3 for Tomb Kings. Tomb Kings to turn 3. Right, well, they polished off the last cannon, then they decided to sit back so that they can do a coordinated charge with everything all on the 1 turn. It's worth noting this fella tried to do an extreme range charge and forced me to do a terror test, even though all he really did was shuffle forward very reluctantly.
2-inch charge.
I don't regard that to be terrifying. I'm going to have to look up the rules on that later and scratch my head a little bit at the rules of this game, as we do on occasion. Fortunately, though, they passed instead of fleeing off the table for no good reason. Over here, these cavalry charged the dwarves in the back, killed 1. Cetra killed 1. No, not Cetra, the herald.
Cetra finally wounded the opposing general, finally.
Yeah, so now that my general's going to have a bit harder time trying to kill him. In return, we bumped off a knight and a skeleton, but because of the army standard bearer and the extra ranks in the dwarfs, that offset the extra effect of the charge and the 1 extra wound. So again, it's locked on a tie, even with musicians. I'm not quite cracking this nut, which is most frustrating.
Cetra surviving just on 1 wound. Emilio passed the 4+ ward save to keep him
And
alive.
I've looked up the rules, and Doug's right. So if a terror-causing creature declares a charge, the target unit must immediately take a panic test to quell their terror.
And the casket of souls was dispelled. And
That's right.
Improperly attempted to cast the movement spell, but upon checking, it cannot be cast on engaged units, so he could not do anything.
What's interesting is that the casket rolled 6 dice and rolled so poorly that I beat it with 3 dice.
Yes.
I mean, I've got the +4 for the standard, but I didn't even need it. The bog standard dwarf +2 would have done the job. Anyway, God, whose turn is it? Dwarf turn? Dwarf turn 4. All right, we'll check in a moment. End of Dwarf turn 4. These guys are shuffled back a bit so that when they get ganged up on everybody, it's less likely to be including that guy who I don't have a good answer for at toughness 8. I need more better magic runes on my axes to deal with that shit. Over here, well, Cetra finally carked it. He, my guy was making all but 1 of his ward saves across multiple rounds of combat, whereas Cetra managed to lose a lot of ward saves, and that's ultimately what caused the difference. In In the melee, I lost 2 dwarves from everything, including the remaining 4 cav, but I only did 2 wounds back, including from my Thane against his rank and file. But because there was 2 units in combat, I had all the extra ranks, had my army standard bearer there. That meant they lost by 4 instead of by 2. And yes, they lost 4 skeletons off the back of this unit and 4 from the cavalry unit, which is an interesting thought. Cavalry are great, but if you're suffering decay from losing a round of combat, you're losing a whole horse rather than a whole infantry guy. And Jesus, that knocks them off quick.
That's why they're considered to be the worst unit of the Tomb King's army. They lose a lot of the standard benefits of cavalry.
How many points are they?
14 or 15 each,
So they're not cheap.
God.
You
And
would,
they're only weapon skill 2 normally and strength 3.
I think
So
another.
you really want to use them for War Machine.
You
hunting
need
or
another-
something.
You don't.
Another Scorpion.
People just
either.
don't use those because the horse archers are pretty much better in every way. They're cheaper and they get a
shoot.
shot and still strength.
And I suppose
3.
if they're going to barge into a cannon, they're going to fuck it up just as quick. All right, well, there's a lesson for today. All right, well, that's it. We're still locked in combat here. This unit is loose.
But with
general is dead.
Cetra the Imperishable has perished.
I was going to question the imperishable bit.
He will be back. He will resurrect in his sarcophagus somewhere, and he will be back.
It's Titanic, the unsinkable. Really, it's tempting fate.
Yes.
So that's it. We're going to play up the turn 4 of the Tomb Kings and see if they can get some points back. We'll check in at the end of that.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Okay, so it's the end of turn 4. Tomb Kings have had their turn 4.
It's a heart.
They charged everything into these guys and they took it in the teeth. 2 of them died, and in return we rolled a fuckload of good dice, killed heaps, won by 8, which meant everything crumbled around them.
Correct. With the Oathstone meaning that no rear or flank charge counts.
Both stones are worse than weight in
All the
gold.
evidence. Yeah, with 3 Oathstones in the army, and also I've forgotten, as Chris said, that they've changed the rules where now apparently you can, if you put an Oathstone down, you can still move. Whereas at the start, I
you can
thought
pick
that
it up.
once he put it down, I almost thought if he puts it down early, he can't move again. But with that not being the case, it changed things a fair bit.
It's worth noting we actually didn't move after we put the other stone down.
No, but in terms of the way that I did it,
In terms of you think about what you're going to do, yeah. This chap had another go at charging, and because I was shuffled back, I was at the same charge range as last time.
Yes.
Yeah, and again didn't make it.
As expected. I definitely made an error with him in that I just thought that he was either movement or 7, and I didn't check. I haven't played this army in about 2 years, and so I completely was wrong that he was only movement 6, so it meant that he was a lot slower than I had expected. And
The army's, I suppose, synchronization of elements didn't work out quite as planned.
no.
And over here, with the boss dead, everyone was hitting a little bit less effectively on the Tomb King side. They killed another couple of guys, and in return we killed a couple of guys. We won by enough that we bumped off a couple more. Having the army standard bearer there and the Earthstone really helps. So we're doing parries all round, and yeah, so they're still in the fight, but they'll probably die next turn. And look, it's worth noting, I bitched and moaned about my dice no end last game. This game, my dice have come good.
They were A+ this game.
And look, they weren't necessarily bad for the Tomb Kings, but mine were really quite good.
Yes.
You saved a lot
Well,
of
enough.
wounds.
Statistically, that lord should have died in that he made 6 of 7 4+ ward saves, which is incredibly unlikely.
We were working out there was 10% chance, and then he did it again, so it was probably like 5% chance of pulling that off.
So
He probably should have taken at least one more wound in the face, probably more
that's
than that.
that's what happens though when you have a beautifully converted white dwarf model. The red beard with his helmet weapon was able to kill Cetra the Imperishable 1-on-1. Cetra went into that combat on 3 wounds, so effectively with him having his I think runes of iron, you said, with the toughness 6 and the 4+ ward, with Cetra also being toughness 6, it meant that he was very hard to kill, and with him successfully passing the ward save, it stopped the Blade of Tra taking effect until the very end, which would have made a huge difference in that stopped him from doing
I think that blade actually got Cetra to live a turn longer than he otherwise would have. But and it's worth noting, I do have many fond memories of my Uber Dwarf General being killed by various things, including one time Emilio's giant mutant squig swallowed him whole. That was fun.
Yeah, it would have been maybe Skarsnik's pet goblin.
Yeah, that was the one. I didn't know about that until that happened, and
it swallowed him whole.
Yes.
Yeah.
that battle was an experiment to begin with that failed miserably, but that just cherry on top of that cake. But look, it was a really interesting game. I have bought these guys before. They do a bunch of really interesting things, none of which is individually overpowering, but if you let them get their own way, they could be horrific.
Had the chariots gotten the charge off, it would have helped a lot. Also, not that our magic was powerful, but with the Casket of Souls, that only successfully cast once in the whole game, which is also very statistically unlikely given the extra power dice that we had. And so the +4 banner of Dispel really made a difference. And with the way that we play it here with the house rules, where you can't individually target characters in units without like a challenge, it meant that I couldn't killing blow, say, the banner guy, because the herald has the killing blow, and because Cetra was in the challenge and he wanted the limelight, it meant that the herald was reduced to just taking attacks at the rank and file. The Oathstones on the 3 units were crucial. Collectively, I worked out that saved Chris from over 10 points in combat resolution, meaning that rear attacks, flank attacks, it just didn't matter.
Yes, that's right. There is, and look, the dwarves rarely have the initiative in a game, so they need something to offset it.
Yes.
Armor goes a long way. The Oathstone does the rest. I think really, dice aside, because they were mediocre for you guys and they were really good for me.
On the dice, we did have one great bit of luck in that the game could have almost ended in our first turn, in that Cetra miscast and could have just sucked himself into a portal and wiped that whole unit, but we rolled, I think, the only result that basically meant that we were untouched there.
And he didn't blow up any of the rest of his own unit either.
I did.
Then he rolled a 1 for that wound, so he didn't get a couple wound from it.
I did unfortunately make an error with my army building, in that the tomb swarms are a minimum 2, which I didn't realise until I had split them up. So I technically broke the rules there, which is unfortunate. I will certainly remember that in future.
Fortunately, it probably worked in my favour in the end, because I would have had 2 of those things.
Yes.
And look, for my money, this turned on the decision that you used to move your guys up a turn early. You would have had a long charge to try and pull off, but if you got that charge off, the impact hits on those chariots would have made that a much more even fight, and the fight would have been back here rather than being up here.
Even though Cetra died, he still was like, I would say that he performed reasonably well, even though he should have killed the Dwarf Lord, just because of his "my will be done" bubble. Without him being in there, those skeleton units would have died a lot earlier. That weapon skill boost effectively stopped the dwarfs from crushing them, which is what would normally happen. And in this round, as we saw with the Oathstone letting them get the full attacks without Cetra's weapon skill helping that unit, that was the most casualties in one round from the dwarfs, because Cetra was gone.
Yeah, Cetra means you probably take, I don't know, 15% or so less hits each turn.
Yeah, which adds up.
And you do probably 15% more hits in return each turn.
Yes.
That, over multiple rounds of combat, that really tallies up. That probably half these dead dwarves were as a result of this. I mean, that's, not half all at once, but half over the course of several rounds of melee. Gentlemen, What have we learned?
I think Tomb Kings are a really exciting army, and I think Doug brought out just one option for this army today. There are several options for this army.
Many, yeah. I wanted to bring a fun list to play because Emilio hadn't tried it, and I wanted to try to have a bunch of different units too, so that we could see. Hence why I brought the skeleton horse people, scorpion. So over 50% of the unit choices, excluding characters, were utilized. There's the one bit where we did get some great luck was in our Entombed Beneath the Sands. Everything actually appeared early, and hence why the only damage we were able to do was to kill the catapults. And while we did lose all the scorpions because we went for a kind of just a fun charge at the end, they actually did perform very well, except for the one turn when they kind of whiffed, but they did what they were supposed to do.
The horrific cannon killers, they basically had the cannons neutralised by turn 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
And which was lucky because none scattered off. The scatter, everything kind of worked out as we were hoping for.
If I'd not got the first turn, I would have had 1 round of shooting instead of 2, and that bloody Sphinx would have survived.
Yes, both of the deployment rolls and the first turn, I unfortunately got 1s for both. So the Tomb Kings, which are known for being slow, they were definitely a bit slow.
I think I said to Doug, when we deployed, we probably spread out a little bit too far apart.
Yes.
Doug talked about that bubble for your general, and we should really have stayed, the whole army should have stayed within the bubble.
It's only 6 inches. So.
But we could still have been a bit tighter than the formation that we started with.
Yeah, because normally I wouldn't use Cetra in a wizard capacity, and with the movement spell being 24 and me putting the War Sphinx over 24, it meant that he could not use the bobble movement spell, and given I misread his movement, or I didn't check it before the game,
he was ineffective for the game.
Completely. However, he did survive, which was surprising because normally he dies. And he did, I think, take 2 cannonball shot attempts. But that was something I won't forget again. Because the Necro Sphinx is faster, movement 10. I just think that thing is fast, but now I remember now that thing's a lot slower than I thought it was.
Yeah. I think the Casket of Souls performed exceptionally well overall. It was definitely worth having.
Bumped off 8 elite soldiers.
Yeah,
yes.
which I don't think any other unit did that much damage.
No,
so
it was the only thing that did damage to the Longbeards. The 3 that are dead there were purely because of the casket in the last turn, just ensuring that the Dwarfs will still need to put this in the Book of Grudges, because no unit was completely unscathed.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind is this was not a ballistic line. You could have chosen a Tomb King's ballistic line. Now, in this terrain favoured Chris in a defensive position. What we didn't count on was his attack, his charge into the chariots so early in the game, and we misjudged the distances. We should have actually held them back a couple of inches and made it that much harder for Chris to make that decision.
2 inches back, and you would have had a maximum of only 1 unit really charging.
Yeah,
that was
the key.
Also, there was crucially, in terms of that overall combat, on the turn that Chris got the charge, the Necro Sphinx died to the cannon, which meant that the Necro Sphinx wasn't there to shift the combat.
Well, interestingly, you'd moved up just far enough that after I charged in, I was like a 5 mil outside the Sphinx's charge up.
Yes.
So you would have lost a turn orienting anyway.
But
that battle lasted for so long.
Yeah, but he would have been in the battle. He would have been in the battle.
And the thunderstorm would have helped. It's one of the few things
you would have had me rolling morale.
Look, the way if we were to wind back time, if you got one unit make the charge, Chris, and the other one didn't make the charge, this would have been a very different battle, and we would have actually had enough to take that one unit and then deal with the second unit. And Chris would be torn between, do I support them or do I hold back and wait for the next?
Absolutely.
I do like being rewarded for being aggressive with dwarf infantry.
Absolutely.
It's one of my pet loves of WoW.
I love that, and the +1 charge helped, plus the that Oathstone rule where they get a 5+ parry when they got charged. I wasn't aware of that, so that helped them a lot
So
defensively
that's just the
as
bog
well.
standard shield wall rule.
Yes,
It's
yes.
only on the turn they get charged.
But
unless you're
on the
an unbreaker.
flank and rear with the Oathstone, having a 5+ parry save to the rear is quite helpful.
It really takes the sting out of some of the shit
Yes.
you get hit by.
So that was quite fun. Cetra, again, had Chris not made the 6 or 7, it would have changed a lot and anything could have happened. Also, while we got lucky with Cetra making 1 ward save for his life, had we had a bit of the luck, Emilio only had to save 1 wound, but unfortunately 50-50 and Cetra did die. Oh! I forgot it, but he does have the curse. He could have blown up and killed the thing.
Oh, the curse.
I forgot all about that.
Just share with the listeners what the curse does, because it's quite a lot of
Tooting
damage.
curse. I haven't played this army in so long. I've forgotten all its rules.
Alright,
So there would have been some massive damage.
It does damage to whatever kills him. It's a dice worth of strength
Isn't it?
6 hits.
It's
or
strength
something.
6 hits.
Oh, well, roll it out. See what would happen. Roll it out.
All right, why not? Can he? I think the Dwarf Lord has 2 wounds left.
Yes.
Can Cetra at least maybe?
Get the last hurrah.
I don't think you
Take it with
get
him.
2, but he might be able to dwarf him down to 1.
Alright, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
Let me see. The curse. The rule is called the curse.
Does he survive the curse? He looks angry.
It's a dice worth of strength 5 hits.
Okay.
Right, 1d6.
1d6, here it comes. 5.
5d5. Alright, so they need 5s to wound.
The Rune of Iron has done quite well. There is 2.
Two
but
wounds.
It's all about these
And he's
wards
got
and armor this time.
armor is 3+, so it's 5+ armor. Oh, and
4
ward.
plus. So make that 7 of 8 ward saves.
Well,
He's
aren't you
alive
just an
again.
arsey little dwarf?
Yeah, Redbeard was good. He added to his legacy today.
Well, that's made up for a lot of games that the dwarves haven't done so well in recent years.
Yeah.
They probably killed up some of the hairs on his beard, and that's...
The
flash of light.
I think it's scarabs that
His
he bursts
hair-
into scarabs, and I think it's scarabs attacking or something.
His hair does look rather like it's been blasted backwards. Anyway, on that note, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to hit like, subscribe, comment. Time to call it a night.